If you'll stand for the pledge. Bill, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Gary Farley.
Here.
Amber Brown. Jerry Sartain.
Here.
Joe Michoto. William Harper.
Here.
Renee Curtis. Here. Zane Cantrell.
Present.
We have a quorum.
You have the minutes of the August 14th meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Move be approved, Mr.
Have a
Chairman.
motion to be approved. Do you have a second? Second. Have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like signs. They are approved. We need to go back to the Miller request for a major home business. And Danielle, what do you have in that?
Thank you. Application 2019-34 involves property located on Newman Road. It's a request for special exception approval for the establishment of a major home-based business involving interior carpentry upon the property, which is zoned residential medium. And Ms. Miller is looking to purchase a portion of this property to establish her home, her principal residence, as well as her home-based business, which is an interior carpentry company. And we considered this application at last month's meeting. Ms. Miller has been before you earlier this year and was successful at requesting a home-based business for property off of Stewart's Creek Road. However, she chose not to purchase that property and continued to look for properties that met her needs. So Ms. Miller is before you again for this Newman Road property. Last month we had some concerns about approving the request when Ms. Miller had not yet purchased the property, and we spoke with the county attorney, and he has offered some solutions, such as including conditions for an expiration date and requiring the applicant, if they do purchase the property, to come back to the board within a certain period of time established by the board. So we did not receive any calls in opposition. I don't believe we heard from anyone at last month's meeting other than the applicant, and that concludes our presentation.
I'm going to call on the county attorney to respond to that request that we had concerning whether it goes with the property, Nick. So if you'll give us a report on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the last meeting, there was a question of whether this board could append as a condition of approval of it being contingent upon Ms. Miller purchasing the property. There's no specific provision in our zoning ordinance that would allow you to do that. That doesn't mean that you couldn't, because this board does have the ability to place reasonable conditions and restrictions on a special exception permit that it grants. However, doing so may present problems moving forward, because keep in mind, if you do approve a special exception permit, it runs with the land. So it doesn't matter whether it's the current owner that's the applicant, or as in Ms. Miller's case, she is the attorney in fact for the current owner. If you were to grant this today, it will run with the land regardless of whether or not she purchases it, and that you really can't change the innate nature of what the type of permit it is. It runs with the land. So I looked further into our regulations, and it does allow this board to place time expiration dates if you are inclined to approve it, and with the concern here of whether to issue it to her to ensure that she's going to actually utilize this property. One way to go about doing that would be to place a reasonable expiration date, 6 months, a year, whatever, that will require Ms. Miller, if she does in fact purchase the property, to come back and renew it, and presumably she will have started on doing what she needs to do in the interim, or if she ends up not purchasing it, then it would just expire.
Any questions of the attorney? Okay, we've had the public hearing on this, but I'm going to open for a public hearing for anyone who has any further information they'd like to ask. Close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the request with a stipulation that they have one-year expiration date from the day of approval, which would be a year from today, to start the work.
And following the
The recommendation of the staff.
okay, of our staff. Do I have a second? Got a second. Any further discussion?
Can I get clarification on your motion? 1 year to start work, is that what you said?
To
For the
start work.
commencement of construction activities?
Right.
Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Joe Machado, Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
William Harper,
Yes.
Renee Curtis,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes, it is approved. The next item we have
Mr.
is...
Chairman, if I'm sorry, just to interject, and just to clarify the record, that would be an automatic expiration regardless of a year? I'm just making sure we're understanding for the record.
At the end of 1 year, if work has not started or whatever, or she didn't buy it, it expires.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next item we have is a request by Charles Cox, who is requesting a special exemption approval for involving an automobile repair. What do you have on that, please?
Application 2019-38 involves the property located at 6533 Forest Lane. It's a request for special exception approval for the establishment of a major home-based business involving auto repair. The property zone residential medium. Nope. There. Mr. Cox owns this .71 acre parcel located off Forest Lane. He has a shop that was legally constructed with a building permit many years ago, and he has operated from his home. He has repaired vehicles from his home for quite some time. He also possessed a business license, so Mr. Cox was under the impression that he was legitimate in regards to all of the rules and regulations. This year we received, or a couple months ago, there was a call complaining on several properties in this particular area. Mr. Cox's property was one of the properties that they indicated a home-based business was being operated from. So upon learning that he was in violation, Mr. Cox called us, obtained the application materials, and worked with us to get the application filed so he could come before you to correct this violation. These are photos of the subject site. This is his primary residence. Commercial zoning is located just within 500 feet of his property. This is Old Nashville Highway that we're looking towards. So you can see the commercial use is just 2 parcels over. So it's not like he's nestled within a subdivision. He is in a subdivision, but it's close to commercial zoning. This is the structure that the activities take place within. And you can see it's nicely kept. We have never received a complaint until this year regarding the business activities. And he just submitted a site plan to show us where the shop is located. There was one phone call, but it was informational. They had concerns about setbacks, but that was resolved, and they were just under the impression that the application involves something other than what it does. And we find that it meets the criteria for home-based business approval, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. Do we have anyone here representing this request? If you'll come around, please. If you'll give us your name and any additional information you want to share about this project.
Yes, sir. My name is Ray Cox. Lived property at 6533 Forest Lane for almost 40 years now. Been a mechanic all my life, heavy equipment, cars. Toured Vietnam, decorated, raised a family. My wife has dementia. Let that noted, and the extra income I make in my shop, I try to put that forward too. So I'm not like, and I don't publicize my business. I just treat people honest and deacon in the church and well out in the community. So
You're currently working on cars at this site now?
Yes, sir.
How many do you work on per day?
It varies. Means I'm semi-retired from working 20 years at Ryder on big trucks, tractor trailers. Maybe 2 a day, maybe 3, maybe 1. It just depends, request, how soon they want it fixed, you know. So
You have automobiles sitting outside waiting to be worked on?
normally they drop them off one night and fix it the next day. I don't stockpile a lot of cars there. I never have. Maybe 1 or 2 at the most.
Any questions? Jerry?
Are you good with the conditions that were put upon you by the application, the staff's recommendations? You good with those? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated. We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone that'd like to speak on this request. Close the public hearing.
Move it be
We
approved.
got one, sorry, back up here a minute. Go ahead, come on around. Does anyone else want to speak on it? Just one? Okay.
Hi, y'all. I'm Dennis Schultz. I live at 6629 Forest Lane, which I'm 4 houses down. I just wanted to comment. I've been there since '97. I've never seen any unsightly vehicles out front. He's probably got the most upkept home in the whole residential area. I've been in his shop quite a few times. Have never noticed anything bad for the environment. So I think he's there to help the community around. He's there. He's helped me numerous times, and he's still able to be there with his wife, who is pretty much incapacitated, and able to get a little extra income to take care of her also. So I've never seen any problems with the property.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Anyone else? Close the public hearing. We'll entertain a motion on it. Jerry, do you have?
I'd make a motion to approve with the staff's recommendations.
Okay.
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
William Harper,
Yes.
Renee Curtis, Zane Cantrell.
Yes, it is approved. The next item is a request by St. Elizabeth Orthodox Christian Church, and they are asking for special exemption approval allowing an expansion of a community facility and a cemetery. What do you have on that, please?
Thank you. Application 2019-39 involves the property located at 7004 Burnt Road. It's a request for special exception approval to allow the expansion of a community assembly facility with a maximum occupancy of 150 to 500 persons and establishment of a cemetery on the property located in the RM zone. So the St. Elizabeth Orthodox Church came before you several years ago to get approval for a medium community assembly on the parcel that fronts both Stewart Creek Road and Burnt Knob Road. They were successful in getting approval for their facility. And since that was approved, they have acquired an additional parcel to the west that they would like to expand their church activities onto this property, or have the ability to use this property for those activities, and to establish a cemetery for their patrons. It would be a private cemetery, not available for the general public. And we have received concerns regarding stormwater in the area, which any construction of buildings on these properties would have to go through site plan approval. They went through site plan approval for the existing structures as well as the shed that was on the property. Stormwater detention, that would be considered during site plan review. Cemeteries can be located in the floodplain, and we verified that with the county engineer. There were some concerns that was brought to our attention about just the appearance of the children being able to see funeral services from the backyard of their home. We passed out the pictures at the prior meeting, and I gave you some additional information regarding the opposition that we heard from regarding this request. So apart from that, considering all of the criteria for special exception approval and the fact that any structural improvements would need to go through site plan review and be approved by the Planning Commission, we found that the request met the criteria for special exception approval and recommend approval.
We have anyone here representing this? If you come around, please.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Father John Oliver, pastor of St. Elizabeth Orthodox Christian Church. Thank you for receiving our request. We have been on this property for going on 5 years now. We met for about a decade near MTSU prior to acquiring this corner property, and then we were able to purchase the property next to it. As we were considering phase 1 of our building project, which is the building on the right where it says existing fellowship hall and classrooms, we worked with Huddleston Steel and a site engineering firm to especially focus on groundwater runoff. Our property sits a little bit lower than the property across the street, Stewart Creek Farms, so a good deal of their runoff was coming onto our property. So we ended up going overboard, we think in a good way, by building 2 ditches on our property, which we intend to keep primarily green space. And the ditches divert water flow into a retention pond that we built. And so that's to handle current runoff. Where it says temple, that is optimistically a 5 or 10 year project down the road. Our chief concern at this point is that quiet church cemetery in the very back of the property, surrounded by trees. As a matter of fact, one of Huddleston Steele's relatives, Mr. Huddleston, who's a parishioner of ours, potentially could be the first in need of a cemetery plot. But our desires for a small church cemetery, and it would be obstructed all the way around by trees, and there wouldn't be a funeral service per se out there for anyone to observe. The most that would happen is that there would be a small procession possibly from the church to take the hearse or the coffin down and tuck it in the back of the property there and do prayers in the back of the property.
So you'll have buffer all the way around
Yes,
the
sir.
property there?
That's correct.
Well, what kind of trees do you plan on?
There are existing trees there now. There's everything from box elder to maple.
But you will be planting additional trees, is that right?
Yes, precisely. You can see the retention pond on the property on the left there. That's a retention pond. And then between the retention pond and that small cluster of cedars to the upper right, that's where the small cemetery would go. And but evergreens would be our first planting around cemetery.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Did a good job.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
We'll open this for a public hearing for anyone who'd like to speak on it, if you'll come around.
I'm Courtney Schrems. I'm a mother to 3 little girls, and my husband Brian is a licensed civil engineer practicing here in Tennessee. He is not here today because he's at work, so I apologize for that. But he has some concerns, and I'm here to share them as well. If you look at the map provided, my house is located at the intersection of Lunar and Marathon. So if you're looking up there, my house is right near the retention pond. I am glad to hear that there will be trees planted, if we could write that in the, is that possible to write that in as like a stipulation of granting this approval? Because I do not want my children witnessing funerals or being around that. Since their tree house is elevated, they can see the whole property as well as the second floor in my house. The other thing I wanted to know is that Stewart Springs subdivision is, follows restrictions. We are not allowed to have wooden fences or vinyl fences. We are only allowed to have the metal wrought iron fences. So it's not that I don't want them to have a cemetery. I just wish that they would locate it closer to the other road, away from the subdivision and out of a floodplain, to be honest. My family are farmers back in Michigan, and during our off-season, we dig graves. So I know that we have personally moved caskets, and we made a lot of money off of that. It's not okay to bury people in a floodplain, and I'm surprised that Tennessee allows that. Those cemeteries where we have moved caskets were zoned many, many years ago. They didn't know about floodplains 50, 100 years ago when they were designing these church cemeteries. So, excuse me, my voice is shaking, I'm nervous, so I apologize. But I also feel very passionate about that because it's close to me. The other thing that my husband has concerns about is he is a civil engineer, and he's concerned about the runoff from the parking lot. He is aware of building and design codes. He understands you can build in a floodplain, but he just hopes that the church takes steps with their construction team and their design team to really do a good job on the parking lot stormwater runoff. Maybe paved pavers to help the water drain, because in the pictures that I provided, we are experiencing so much flooding. I moved into that property maybe 5, 6 years ago, and ever since, as he mentioned, the subdivision across the street redesigned their drainage. They redid their retention ponds. They dug underneath Stewart's Creek Road, and so it's definitely flowing better to the creek. But unfortunately, it's getting down to where their retention pond is, and I don't know if it needs to be maintained or if there's a procedure for maintaining that retention pond, but my backyard has been flooding all the way up to the house. So we have some serious concerns regarding flooding for us.
Let me ask you this. If they planted additional trees along there, the way they're saying, would that help?
Yes, if you notice in the pictures I sent, there are actually 2 streams of water. One of them was designed by our developer in our backyard to help water flow down to the creek, and then another stream is on their side. So I don't have the ability to plant any trees in my yard, otherwise I would.
Well, that's what their plan is showing, that they will have additional buffer trees along there, and that will be done in the site plan? Is that part of the site plan?
Well, the cemetery itself would not require a site plan.
No, but I'm talking about over here along that road.
Any proposed structures for that parcel or any of the parcels associated with the church would have to go through site plan.
Yeah. So I think that would relieve some of your concerns, probably not all of it. But if in fact there is water in that area where they want to bury people, I don't think too many people want to be buried in where there's water standing to begin with, so that may resolve its own self. So if you get that buffer line where you won't have to, where you will be protected, I think that would solve your problem.
I want you to know that that picture that I sent you was not from the 2010 flood. That picture of that flooded area, of the grassy area, was just a normal rainy day. Okay, so it's not like it's flooding just through normal rain. Do you know what I mean? That it just, okay.
We understand what you're saying. Gary?
I don't have a question for her, but my comment is, or my question to staff is, when the site plan is done, the runoff that she talked about, the flooding and the water, want our engineer staff look at that site plan and make the corrections that need to be made to see that this doesn't happen?
Right, absolutely. And I did show your photos to the county engineer, so he was made aware that there is standing water and it's a normal rain event, not an exceptional event.
Okay.
And any improvements, it would be when they sought approval for a structure on that property, that it would be taken into consideration.
Okay.
Now, if you are having issues with drainage, that the drainage is happening in an area that's not designated as a drainage easement on your property, and you have issues, you could always call our department and talk to them. They'll go out and look to make sure that all of the existing retention ponds in the area are working and functioning as they were designed.
Which department?
Planning and engineering.
Okay.
That's the number that you called to reach us.
Okay.
Any further questions? Renee?
I'd like to, do you have to have flood insurance on your property now?
No, my house, when we purchased it, the back corner was a floodplain, but that was it. The black corner of the lot, of the yard.
Is that where this little bridge is, right here? I've got a circle on it. Is there a bridge? No. What is that? That's it, like a drainage easement?
Use the microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
The drainage easement there from the subdivision?
Yes.
Okay, and so that's a bridge. So you're experiencing enough water there to have a bridge?
Yes, and it flows like crazy. But that's not where the part that was designed a floodplain after 2010. It was the other corner that is closer to the retention pond.
So which side of your house is the property, or do you see it?
This one right here.
Okay.
It's on her handout. It is the first picture on your left that shows the corner of my property that is designated as a floodplain.
Gary?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Can you show us up here where you live at compared to
Yes, ma'am.
right there? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It disappears on me, okay, right there.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you, you may be seated. Anyone else? Close the public hearing. Bill, did you have? No.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the request with the stipulations that the planning staff has set forth for this application.
Okay.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Gary Farley,
Yes.
Jerry Sartain,
Yes.
William Harper,
Yes.
Renee Curtis,
Yes.
Zane Cantrell.
Yes, it is approved. Any further business to come before the BZA?
No, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here and participating, and we are adjourned.